evening and welcome to the Strand. I'm Christina Foxley, Director of Events, and I'm pleased to welcome Gary Shteyngart, here tonight to talk about Super Sad True Love Story. The New York Times best-selling novel was named to over 40 Best Books of the Year lists, including NPR's Fresh Air, the New York Times, Washington Post, and O Magazine. The book has been called an homage to science fiction with a satirical postmodern overlay of authorial wish fulfillment. People magazine said that it's as if Vladimir Nabokov rewrote 1984. Super Sad True Love Story is Gary's third novel. Absurdistan was a national bestseller, and his first book, the Russian Debutante's Handbook, won the Stephen Crane Award for First Fiction and the National Jewish Book Award for Fiction. Gary was named a Granta Best Young American Novelist and a New Yorker Best Writer Under 40. And most importantly, the Strand selected Gary to participate in its curated collection series. You can find a table full of books that have inspired Gary downstairs and online. Following his presentation, Gary and his adorable dog Felix will take your questions. They will then stick around to sign books which you can purchase downstairs on your way out of the store. Please join me in welcoming the man, the Portland Oregonian called a droll Kafka, Gary Shteyngart, and the extremely talented Felix to the Strand.
Droll Kafka in the house. Thank you for coming. Thank you for admiring my dog, those of you who do. Felix will sign books tonight and possibly eat them wherever he likes. Hi, sweetheart. I was just touring on the road and I haven't seen him in 11 days. Look how he looks at me. Oh, okay, never mind. He doesn't really care. Yeah. So, it's a real pleasure to be here. Can you hear me in the back? Is that okay? Yeah. This store means a lot to me. When I was a young man, back in the 1930s, I used to come here all the time because I was very poor. I was a starving writer, starving writers. And they used to have a section, I think they still do, right? The reviewer's copy section, yeah, 50% off, yeah. You still have that, that's so amazing because nobody really reviews books anymore, which is interesting. But I would go down there and I would buy these titles that I'd never heard of. They had names like The Chocolate Bunny or The Vanilla Rabbit. Clearly these books were not meant to succeed. The publishers had just lumped them together at the very end. And I would read these books thinking someday I would write something better than The Chocolate Rabbit and The Vanilla Bunny. But I never did. But it was a very sweet effort. So I would save up all my money and I would save up $20 and I would allocate $2 for a hot dog, or 2 hot dogs back then, and $18 for books, and that would be about 3 books back then. 3 books and 2 hot dogs. Is there any better way to live for a young starving writer? I'd like to begin by actually dispelling a rumor that's been circulating about me on the intertube, a kind of birther rumor. The rumor, and Felix can attest to this, is that I actually was born in the United States, and all this Russian stuff is just make-believe. So I brought today my long-form birth certificate from Russia. And it says, born in 1972 in Leningrad, USSR, Igor Hussein Shteyngart. Hussein, I didn't realize that. That's so interesting. That's another rumor you can start spreading in the literature, because rumors sell books. Good. Okay. I did the same joke in Arizona. Interesting reception. I didn't know people could still be hogtied and run out on a rail. But in some parts of this country, Felix saved me, of course. So I'll read a little bit from Super Sad True Love Story. This is my last book. It's now in paperback. Oh, I should tell one thing, speaking of my doggy. Felix will be in a movie. I did a trailer for some of you know, I did a trailer for my first book starring James Franco and other luminaries. This week, the new paperback trailer will be released with a very special guest star. And one guest star we're used to, Felix, will be in the movie as well. It's a really beautiful piece of work. It's kind of heartbreaking, the trailer. It really is a love story. This book, I love this cover. This cover, we did a focus group, and it tested well with the youths. So, in Random House, we ran downstairs, we got some youths from Broadway, and we dragged them up, and we said, "Do you want to read a book?" And they were like, "No." And then we said, "What do you think of this?" And they're like, "Whoa, that is shiny." And they spent a lot of time trying to turn it on by pressing these buttons. But you can't. But if you don't like this, you can also use this as a twister cover for dachshunds. And Felix has done his paw prints on this one. Oh, goodness. Okay. Woof. So, as some of you may know, A Super Sad True Love Story is a novel that is set slightly in the future, when a completely illiterate America is about to fall apart. So, next Tuesday. The ruling party is the bipartisan party. Isn't that nice? Just one party. And it's under the leadership of Defense Secretary Rubinstein. There's a device called the apparat, which is worn as a pendant, which ranks everyone's wealth, attractiveness, and personality. So let's say I walk into a bar, one of these nice NYU-style bars around here. Immediately I'm the 7th ugliest man in the bar, but I have maybe the 4th best credit rating. So you see what it does. It judges you. The main characters are the Russian-American Lenny Abramov. He's the narrator of this section. He's approaching his 40s, which is a big no-no in this society, and he works for a company called Post-Human Services, which is trying to find a cure for death. Not going very well. And he has a younger Korean-American girlfriend named Eunice Park, who mostly spends the book shopping online. Lenny is one of the last people in this future who likes to read books. Young people think that they smell very badly, so they don't read them. So here's a little scene from Lenny's perspective, okay? And it's where he introduces Eunice to his parents, the Abramovs. The next day, Eunice and I took the Long Island Railroad to Westbury, Long Island to meet my parents, the Abramovs. The love I felt for Eunice on that train ride had a capital and provinces, parishes and a Vatican, an orange planet and many sullen moons. It was systemic and it was complete. Eunice was nervous almost to the point of quaking. Her outfit was conservative for the occasion, a sky blue blouse with a Peter Pan collar and white buttons, pleated wool skirt reaching down below the knee, a black ribbon tied around the neck. From certain angles, she looked like one of the Orthodox Jewish women who have overrun my co-op building on Grand Street. There she was, sweating so handsomely in her orange pleather LIRR seat. Her elder worship and elder fear brought out a strange immigrant pride in me. There was something else too. It was on the Long Island Railroad some 20 years ago that I had had my first crush on a Korean girl. I'd been a freshman at a prestigious math and science high school in Tribeca. Most of the other kids in that math and science high school were Asian, and although technically you had to live within New York City to go to the school, there were more than a few of us who faked our residency and commuted from various parcels of Long Island. For me, the long ride to Westbury amidst dozens of fellow nerd students was a particularly difficult one because it was public knowledge at the science high school that my weighted average was a dismal 86.894, while at least 91.553 had been recommended for entry into Cornell or the University of Pennsylvania, the weakest of the Ivy League schools. As immigrant children from high-performing nations, we knew our parents would slap us across the mouth for anything less than Cornell. Several of the Korean and Chinese boys who took the railroad with me, their spiky hair still haunts my most literal dreams, would dance around me while singing my average. 86.894, 86.894. You won't even get into Oberlin with that, they said. Have fun at NYU, Abramov. Yeah, see you at the University of Chicago. It's the teacher of teachers. Reading at the University of Chicago did not go well. But there was one girl, another Eunice, a Eunice Choi to be exact, a tall, quiet beauty who would pry the boys away from me while shouting, "It's not Lenny's fault he can't do well in school. Remember what Reverend Sung says in church? We're all different. We all have different abilities. Remember the fall of man? We're all fallen creatures, you know." And then she'd sit down with me and unbidden help me with my impossible chemistry homework, moving the strange letters and numbers around my notebook until the equations were for some reason deemed balanced. while I, utterly unbalanced by the magical girl next to me, her skin glowing beneath her summer gym shorts and orange Princeton jersey, tried to catch a brief smell of her hair or a brush of her hard elbow. It was the first time a woman had risen up to defend me, had given me the idea that I actually should be defended, that I wasn't a bad person, just not as skilled at life as some others. At Westbury, Eunice and I disembarked before an armored personnel carrier sitting by the squat station house, its .50 caliber Browning gun bouncing up and down. National Guardsmen were surveying the diverse crowd, Salvadorans and Irish and South Asians and Jews, and whoever else had chosen to make this corner of central Long Island the rich, smelly tapestry it had now become. The troops appeared angrier and more sunburned than usual. Perhaps they had just been rotated out of Venezuela. We're fighting in Venezuela now. It's not going well. Beside the armored personnel carrier, a sign read, "It is forbidden to acknowledge the existence of this armored personnel carrier, the object. By reading this sign, you have denied existence of the object and implied consent." We took a cab to the corner of Washington Avenue in Myron, the most important corner of my life. I could already see my parents' brownish half-brick, half-stucco cape, the golden mailbox out in front, the faux 19th century lamp beside it, the cheap lawn chairs stacked on the island of cement that was supposed to be the front porch, and the gigantic flags of the United States and Israel billowing from 2 flagpoles. I felt a little embarrassed because I knew that Eunice's parents were much better off than mine. At the door, my mother appeared in her usual household outfit, white bra and panties. She was about to throw her arms around my neck when she noticed Eunice let out some Russian garble of amazement and retreated inside the house, leaving me with the visuals of her thick breasts and white little round of belly. My father, shirtless, soon took her place, also gasped at Eunice, ran his hand against his naked, muscular breasts, said, "Oh," then hugged me. There was hair against my new dress shirt, the gray carpet of hair that my father wore with an odd touch of class, as if he were a royal in some tropical country. He kissed me on both cheeks, and I did the same, feeling the instructions, the code of Russian father-son relations. Father means I have to love him, have to listen to him, can't offend him, can't hurt him, can't bring him to task for past wrongs. He's an old man now, defenseless. My mother reappeared in shorts and a wife-beater. "Synochek, little son," she shouted, "look who's come to visit us, nash lubimets, our favorite." She shook Eunice's hand, and both of my parents swiftly evaluated her, affirmed that she was, like her predecessors, not Jewish, but quietly approved of the fact that she was thin and attractive with a healthy black mane of hair. My mother unwrapped her own precious blonde locks from the green handkerchief that kept them safe from the American sun and smiled prettily at Eunice. She began talking in her brave post-retirement English about how glad she was to have a potential daughter-in-law, filling in the contours of her loneliness with rapid-fire questions about my mysterious life in faraway New York City. Does Lenny keep clean house? Does he vacuum? Once I come to college dormitorium. Oh, awful, such smell. That ficus tree, old cheese on table, socks hanging in window. Eunice smiled and spoke in my favor. "He's like very good, Mrs. Abramov," she said. "He's like very clean." I looked at her with love. Somewhere beneath the bright suburban skies, I felt the presence of a .50 caliber Browning gun swiveling toward an incoming Long Island Railroad train. But here I stood, surrounded by the people who loved me. "I brought Tagamet from the discount pharmacy," I said to my father, taking 5 boxes out of the bag I brought. "Thank you, malinki, little one," my father said, taking hold of his beloved drug. "I have a peptic ulcer," he said to Eunice, pointing at the depths of his tortured stomach. My mother had already grabbed hold of the back of my head and was madly stroking my hair. "So gray," she said. "So old he gets, almost 40. Lyonya, what is happening to you? Too much stress? Also losing hair. Oh my God." "You are named Eunice," my father said. "Do you know where it comes from, such name?" "Like my parents?" Eunice gamely began. "No."